Guys, like, comment, subscribe, share the video, especially if you love college football as much as I do. Now it's time to talk about the Georgia Bulldogs. And before I get a lot of heat, and honestly, I know I'm going to get it anyways, but I don't really care. Georgia has kind of been on a decline lately. Listen to these numbers: 2022, 15-0, national champs, SEC champs, all that good stuff. 23, 13-1, missed the playoffs, won an Orange Bowl against a backup Florida State team, and can't beat Alabama. Last year, 24, they went 11-3, made the 12-team playoff, but lost to Notre Dame. And then before that, lost to Ole Miss in a blowout, and lost to Alabama again. Georgia, in my opinion, they're in for a rough year. I've noticed some things with Georgia. Their running game has not been good in the last several years. Their receiving game has been pretty bad at times, very inconsistent. Now, I know Gunnar Stockton is the quarterback now, but still, bad offensive line play, very inconsistent for Georgia last year. And the year before that, it started to happen in the second half of the year, or it would show up in big games like Auburn and Alabama. I'm not expecting a lot out of Georgia this year, so that's that. They start the year with Marshall, Austin Peay, and then they go to Tennessee, and then they play Bama, Kentucky. I'm going to skip Auburn, and I'm going to skip Georgia Tech, Florida, and Texas. They should win these first three games, no problem. I know Tennessee was pretty good last year. Nico's gone. That might actually help the team. But they also lost a lot of defensive players on that team from a year ago. They also lost Dylan Sampson, the running back from Tennessee. They also lost, I believe they lost their defensive coordinator and their quarterback. While I don't think Nico was any good, he was also on that team. He had experience. He knows he's been part of winning big games. I think they should smash Tennessee like they've been doing every year since 2016. They play Alabama at home. I think they win this game. And again, I'm not expecting Alabama to be very, very good this year. People can say what they want. I don't think Kalen DeBoer is the right guy for Alabama. I'm not saying he's not a good coach, but when you have problems like players throwing hissy fits at the end of a Vanderbilt game and refusing to get off the field, and you've got one of your own players sending pictures of their genitalia to your own daughter, among other problems on that team, that's not very good. That's not a good sign. That's not good business for football. It's a sign that he's having problems with managing his own players, and that's not very good. And even though Alabama here's the thing, Alabama has a lot of talent. Any decent coach that knows what they're doing and is successful would win a lot of games with that team. You know, I understand. I kind of get the Tennessee loss. Tennessee was a playoff team last year. Okay. At Vanderbilt, at Oklahoma, who was 6-7 last year, are unacceptable losses. Losing to a half of a Michigan team that was bad last year in a bowl is unacceptable when you got a lot of starters in your game. So being 9-4 for Alabama with a lot of talent is unacceptable. And yes, talent matters in football. It does matter. That's why Ohio State, that's why our son went on to win the national championship last year. That's why Georgia is so popular. That's why Texas is so popular. That's why so many things matter, because talent matters. So I think they beat Alabama because, again, I don't think DeBoer is the right guy for Alabama. Then they come back home to take on Kentucky, and I think they win that one too, no problem. They don't ever really struggle with Kentucky at home. It's usually on the road at night when they struggle with Kentucky, because Kentucky's a physical team. So Georgia's 5-0, and people think, oh my goodness, they're 5-0, they're going to be great. And then reality hits them in the mouth. I think they lose at Auburn. They struggled with Auburn the last 2 years. When Auburn either did not have much talent, like in 23, they still could have beat Georgia at home. They lost by 7. Or when they lose to an Auburn team who's really good but makes a lot of dumb mistakes and turns the ball over too much and just likes to shoot themselves in the foot. And it was still a hard game for Georgia last year at home. This time they're at Auburn. I believe that quarterback position will be a lot better, whether it's Jackson or whether it's Deuce Knight that plays the position at that point of the year, because the rest of that team is loaded at every position. Receivers are good, DBs are good, their defensive front's always really good for Auburn, especially now that Hugh Freeze is there recruiting and building every position. The offensive line's going to be solid again. They'll be able to run the football again. I think Auburn surprises Georgia. And then they come back home to take on Ole Miss. They should win. Ole Miss lost a lot of pieces last year, most notably Jackson Dart. And it's a home game for Georgia, so I believe they get revenge. So now they're sitting at 6-1, probably a top 5 team still. And then they go to play Florida. Keep in mind, Lagway was the quarterback. He was lighting up Georgia pretty good, and then he got hurt in that game. Georgia had a hard time. I know Carson Beck's gone. He had turnovers, but big part of that game was the offensive line was having a hard time blocking Florida's defensive front. Florida's defense got better as the season went along. That's the scary part. Florida's bringing back most of that team, including DJ Lagway. Georgia has been on a decline lately, in my opinion, and I don't think it ends there. Florida almost had it last year. I think they get the Dogs this time, and I think they hand them their second L of the season. Then they come back home again to take on Mississippi State. I think they should win that game, no problem. I think it's at Mississippi State. I can't remember, but they do win that game. And then let me talk about Charlotte. They'll beat Charlotte, and let's talk about Texas and Georgia Tech. I have them losing to Texas at home. Texas was a good team last year, but the problem was Steve Sarkisian was very arrogant. He liked to go for it on fourth down a lot, especially on the other at midfield. They're very close. And I think that's why he lost some games, especially to Georgia in that first game. That's why he lost to Ohio State. He was a very arrogant coach. His play calling wasn't the best, but he had a very good program, still has a good program. I think Texas might win the whole thing this year. I think Texas is a little bit better than Georgia at this point. Texas is steady building that program, building that team with recruiting, the transfer portal. Arch Manning's going to be the quarterback. I think long-term he's better than Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers used to throw a lot of games away or keep games close to what they should have been because of his own dumb decision making. But I believe Georgia catches another L here. And then finally, this end the season, I think they lose to Georgia Tech, and I'll tell you why. And it has nothing to do with how close that game was this past year. Georgia Tech with Brent Key has been a very good decision. If you notice something about Brent Key, he's been recruiting pretty well. The transfer portal's been pretty good for him. And again, they're not the most talented team in the country, but what was it that Georgia Tech did very well last year? They ran the football very well. They ate up a lot of clock. They were dominant on both sides of the football on the lines of scrimmage. Now, I understand Georgia Tech's secondary wasn't very good. Their pass defense overall was not very good, but they were a very physical front. They were able to get to the quarterback a lot in some games. Their running game was just ridiculous. They have Philo, who's probably going to be the guy. Now, if you don't know who that is, look it up against Miami. He had a touchdown pass. He made some big plays in that game to help them win when Haynes King got hurt a lot last year. It's at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech out-physical Georgia a lot in that game, and the only reason Georgia came back to win was because of a stupid fumble that they gave up with 2 minutes left in the game, and that was on a third down and one quarterback keeper. He had the first down. He just fumbled for whatever reason, gave the game to Georgia after that. But I think they're more physical to Georgia. Again, a team can be very talented. Look what Georgia Tech, how they beat teams last year, a top 10 Florida State team. Now, I know Florida State won 2 games, but at the time, nobody knew that was going to happen. It was a big win for Georgia Tech. They out-physicaled Florida State with less talent. Ended up beating them by running for almost 300 yards in that game. Look it up. Fast forward to a top 4 Miami team with Cam Ward, the best quarterback in Miami history. How did Georgia Tech beat them? Simple. Ran the football down their throat with the quarterback, with effective running backs, converting third down when they needed to, getting a few key fourth down stops. By the way, Georgia Tech was really excellent at getting fourth down stops. They did so against Georgia last year. I think they beat Georgia at home this year and keeps Georgia out the playoffs. So I have Georgia at 8-4 for those reasons. Team not playing like they used to. Their running game's not very good. Offensive line play wasn't very good. Now, I know there's injuries, but Georgia's got players coming in left and right. They recruit really good. I don't see that as an excuse. So, yeah, give me Georgia to go 8-4. Best case, they beat Auburn in a close game. They still continue to beat Florida like they do every year. They can beat Georgia Tech. Best case, they could be 11-1. I could be wrong. But Georgia will probably not be the same.